Welcome, everyone. I'm Diane with EdWeb, and it's my honor to introduce our presentation today with the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. I'm here with Kathy Metcalf, Vice President of Education for the Society, and our honored guest, Hiroshi Miyamura, who received the medal for his service with the U.S. Army in the Korean War. And we're also joined by Ms. Tyra's students from Hiroshi Miyamura High School in New Mexico. We want to thank all of you for being with us today. Okay, Kathy and Hiroshi, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Super. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with Mr. Miyamura and with the students at Miyamura High School, and also with all those of you who have joined us online. I noticed that we have a good many elementary school students with us today, and a few middle school and high schoolers, and also welcome to the general public. Just so you all know how I approach this when we do a webinar, our first concern always is to answer student questions. So we will be starting with some questions that students have prepared ahead of time, both students here at Miyamura High School and also from Steel Canyon High School in San Diego. And we will take questions online as we go through the process today. So to get started, just a little bit of background. Mr. Miyamura's living history is available on the medalofhonor.com website, and I'm sure that if you Google Hiroshi Miyamura, he will pop up all over the place because you've done a lot of interviews over the years, haven't you?
A few of them, yes.
Yes. So it has been a while since you were awarded that Medal of Honor, and I noticed yesterday, I had the honor of going to Mr. Miyamura's home and looking at his citation, and unlike most citations for the Medal of Honor, his was signed by one president and it was awarded by another president. Would you tell our audience a little bit why that happened that way?
Yes. When I was serving in Korea, President Truman was in office then. And in time, I became a POW, and I spent 28 months in a POW camp. And during that period, President Eisenhower was elected the President of the United States. So when I was released, because of circumstances that they did not release my name to the public as receiving the Medal of Honor because they were afraid of retaliation from the enemy. So they kept it a secret, but when it eventually came out, I was told that I had received the Medal of Honor for the actions on April 24th, 1951.
Very good. So when you went to the White House to receive the medal.
So, you know, when I received that telegram from the White House and read the contents, I could not believe what I was reading, because it said, you come to the White House and you will be presented the Medal of Honor from President Eisenhower. And that in itself was such an honor for me to receive that medal from the president, especially President Eisenhower, because during my period in the World War II, I was in Europe when President Eisenhower at that time was a 5-star general, head of all the NATO forces in the European theater, and had the respect of every general from those countries. So to receive the medal from him was such an high honor.
That is a terrific story. Of all the medals I've read about, that's the only one where there was there were two different presidents involved. Yeah. That is really cool. But they kept your medal, your award, a secret, both because if you were a prisoner, they didn't want retaliation against you, but they didn't know if you were a prisoner or not, right?
Well, that's true, because the enemy did not release names of their captors, only because the second year in captivity, they decided to exchange prisoners of war. And that is the reason why they start releasing names that they held captive. And my wife received a letter from the Defense Department saying that I am now a prisoner of war. The first letter was I was missing in action. That went on for a year. But as soon as they released the name, they notified my wife.
And you got some special treatment when you arrived back in the United States, I understand, on the ship? When you came back to the United States via ship and you arrived in San Francisco?
Oh, yes. I was not expecting that, but my father and my wife and some of my sisters were there at the end of the gangplank, and I was allowed to be the first one to disembark. So it was quite a surprise to see them and be the first one off the ship. And the ship's name by that time, then was a ship named Adder, and I'd forgotten the name until my good friend Ken found out that I was on the Adder, and he got a picture of that ship. So it brings back memories every time I see that picture.
Well, that's wonderful. And a very rare piece of film footage is part of Mr. Miyamura's living history. There is actually a clip of him coming down the ramp off the ship and being greeted by Terry. And Mrs. Miyamura, I didn't realize that until I watched really closely yesterday. It's a very short piece, but you can see him greeting her after he's been in captivity and away from home for close to 3 years. So that's a beautiful piece.
But then, I received a call just a day or so later from the people in Gallup. And I was told not to come home until a certain date. I had no idea what they were planning. And on that day, I arrived in Gallup. It just was a complete surprise. And I was getting weak at my knees because I didn't expect something like that. To see all the students at the depot waiting for me to come in. And then they had to fly over, and all the dignitaries on the stage and all. It was such an honor.
That's wonderful. And so you stopped in Gallup on your way to Washington to get the Medal of Honor, right?
Well, before I did that, I was sent to Fort Bliss, Texas, where I was inducted in January 1944. But I was to receive my Medal of Honor, my discharge from the general at Fort Bliss. And I didn't know that he had planned a march in review for me. And that was such an honor. And I've never forgotten that.
That's wonderful that you got such a great welcome home. But the most important thing, from what you were telling me yesterday, the site that meant the most to you was when you in Korea, when you were released. What site struck you the most?
Well, after those days in the POW camp, we were told as we assembled in an area, when you hear your name called, you will be going home within a week or two. And the weeks went by until we were down to number 25 of us left. And we began to wonder if we were ever going to be called. And eventually on August 20th, they called all our names and we were told we're going home. And when we boarded a truck first, and then we had to get off the trucks and get on a train. And that train pulled within a few yards from the area that Pam and John was located. That's a headquarters of the U.S. Army. But what caught my attention was the Star-Spangled Banner flying in the breeze. And it was such a beautiful sight. And I felt I'm home now. And you never heard a sound from any of us because we were still in a state of shock, not believing that we were actually back home again to the United States side. And that was such an honor.
Great. Thank you so much. We're going to start taking questions from students now. So if we could have a question from a student, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Francesca. My first question is, what was your biggest motivation to join the Army during World War II?
What motivated you to join the Army during World War II?
During World War II, it was because I grew up in Gallup, and we were all of us were, excuse me, immigrants, but we considered ourselves Americans. That's when I received a rude awakening. I did not know that I was reclassified as a enemy alien because of my ancestry that bombed Pearl Harbor during December 1941. And I was told I cannot join the Army with my classmates that wanted to join the services. So I had to go back to school. Not until our unit from Hawaii, made up primarily of Japanese American soldiers that wanted to prove their loyalty to America, they were allowed to form a battalion and sent to the European theater. They distinguished themselves in battle and suffered heavy casualties. And the commander of the unit asked for more troops, Nisei troops. That was us, second generation. And our government formed a regimental combat team and called that team the 442nd Regiment, and reversed their decision to reclassify us back to A1, and we were allowed then to be drafted or volunteer for services.
Very good. Thank you for that answer. And it took you a while to get there. You got overseas just as the war ended.
Well, due to circumstances, I did not go overseas when I was supposed to have. The first time it was because I was not 19. The government had passed a law saying you had to be 19 to go overseas. So the 7 of us that were on the train ready to pull out of the station were called off the train and said, we will not be going with the unit. And the reason being we weren't 19. But some of my buddies were on the train that were my age. And I said, why didn't they call them off? But they said, we don't know, just go on. And the train left, and we were standing there and watched the train pull on. We were immediately reassigned to a unit that was going to undergo basic training. And I was assigned to a heavy weapons company in the 100th Battalion, the original battalion that was sent to the European theater. I was to be one of the first replacements.
Okay. And then the war ended. He was out of the service for a while, but went back in for, you were in the reserves, right? And then got called up for Korea.
The reason for that being, when we returned from Europe in June of 46, officer asked if when we were being discharged from the service, asked if we would like to join the Army Reserve. And for 3 years. And I said, well, we all said we'd like to join. So we joined the Army Reserves and then went home.
Okay.
Well, in the meantime, I got married.
Yes, that's important.
And then in 1949, June of 49, an officer came to see me. And he asked me if your 3 years enlistment is up, would you like to sign up for another 3 years? I said, yes, I would. So I signed another 3 years. And then June of 1950, what happened during that period? North Korea invaded South Korea. And being a reservist, we were the first to be called back.
Okay. Thank you so much for the history. Let's go on to another student question here.
Hi, my name is Casey, and I wanted to know what lessons you learned from war that you used later in life.
Oh, that's a good question. What lessons did you learn from war that you used later in life?
I've learned a lot of different things that I've been using in life and trying to teach others to live and learn about what I had learned. As a POW, I learned that if you're given food to eat it. Don't say you don't like it, because you're going to need it on the march. And I told many of these I was 24 at the time, a lot of these young men were 16, 17-year-old, and they said they could not eat that food. And I told them, if you don't eat it, you're not going to make it to the camp. And they still refused to eat it, and they did not make it to the camp. So it taught me that you don't give up, because once you give up, then there's no hope you're going to succeed. But if you keep trying, eventually you may succeed. And another thing is, events are going to happen in your life. A lot of the events you will not understand, why did it happen that way? And you have no control over that. So I tell the young people, do not worry about events that happen to you that you have no control over, because all it does is cause you to worry and cause sickness eventually. And one last thing I learned, that you have to have a friend that you can trust with your life, because one day you will need that friend. Thank you.
You met some lifelong friends in Korea.
I have.
And
Especially during the prison camp days, the men that did not associate with any one of us, did not have any friends, did not return with us either. So I learned that you have to have a friend. And another thing is so important is that you learn so much from people that you don't know, or eventually become your friend. And you learn from other people. Everyone has a thing that they can teach you about. So yeah, they'll always keep your eyes, ears, and looking for those friends that you know can help you, and you can help them.
very good. Thank you. We have another student question.
Hi, Mr. Miyamura. I'm Angelina Santiago, and my question for you is, since I am going to the military, the Army, what advice would you give to future enlisters or recruiters?
What advice would you have for young people who are going to go into the Army?
Well, like I was saying, I'm not an expert. I'm not a counselor. But from my experience, the Army, you don't always have a place to sleep at night if you're in combat. Whereas Navy and the Air Force always had a bed to go back to. That is so important, because a doughboy really has to rough it out. He's got to dig a hole and sleep in it.
Although I understand you didn't have a very good time on the ship.
Well, no, I really didn't. I was given the choice to either fly home or go back on the ship with my buddies.
Uh-huh.
And I only weighed 98 pounds when I was released. So, because I had dysentery most of the time. And I thought within 19 days I should put on a little weight. So I agreed to go with my buddies on the ship. And that was one of the biggest mistakes I made. I've been over the Atlantic back and forth. I've been over the Japan Sea, never got sick, so I never thought I would get sick on that ship. But I spent 11 days on that bunk, and I could not get out of it.
A lesson there if you're thinking about going into the Navy. It's a lot of time on boats.
Yeah.
We have another student question over here.
Yes.
Hi, sir. My name is Noah, and you've met a lot of famous people over the years, and I want to know who are some of your favorites and why.
Oh, who are some of your favorite famous people that you've met over the years? You told us a
Famous.
little about General Eisenhower.
Oh, well, being a Medal of Honor recipient, President Kennedy actually was the first president to invite us to the White House. He wanted to meet each one of us personally. So we were invited in 1963 to the White House, or somewhere around that, I can't remember the exact date. All of us to the White House. And I met so many distinguished people then. The men in power at that time. And then from then on, because of what President Kennedy did, we would have been invited to every inauguration since. And we get to see and meet the chiefs of staff and all the top people of Washington. And then the Medal of Honor Society has a convention every year, and where it's held in various cities throughout the country. And we meet so many of the local dignitaries and all that. There are so many that we have met, it's hard to name all of them. But we've met so many different movie stars as well as famous people. Also famous recipients that received the Medal of Honor. I read about them when I was a young boy. And I happened to meet a couple of those that I read about. So I've been very fortunate.
It's kind of interesting to see at a Medal of Honor Society convention the reversal of roles in regard to the question you're asking, because at a convention, as you see here in Gallup, and as Mr. Robbins and I have seen these last 2 days, where Mr. Miyamura is the celebrity here, at a convention, it's the Medal of Honor recipients who tend to be the celebrities. And so what we usually think of as celebrities, are happy to meet them. It's pretty fun to watch. Can we go with another student question?
Hi, Mr. Miyamura.
Yes,
My
sir.
name is Peyton, and you described how memorable it was to see the American flag when you were released from the prisoner of war camp. Why was that so important, and what does the flag mean to you today?
He said you described seeing the flag when you were first released from the POW camp, and he wanted to know, why is that so important, and what does the flag mean to you today?
Well, to me, and to the majority of military people that I have met, look to the flag as a symbol of what this country stands for. The red, white, and blue represents so much the blood that has been shed and all. So, yeah, to me, it's such an important flag, because it lets other countries know that we are in the vicinity or area whenever the sergeants start flying in the breeze. It's such an important flag for every one of us growing up, because it is a symbol of this country and what it stands for.
Thank you. The symbolism is so important to so many of us, and you really hear a lot of that from Medal of Honor recipients. And your description of seeing that being the first thing you saw as once again regaining your freedom, that's very valuable for all of us to hear. Thank you for sharing that with us. Could we have another student question? And while we're picking a student question, I want to give a shout out. We just saw in the chat that Alaska Military Youth Academy is watching from all the way up in Alaska.
Wow.
They're online with us. So
Wow.
Shout out to them. Thanks. Student question?
Hello, Mr. Miyamura. I wanted to ask, why do you think
what do you think are the greatest challenges that our generation faces?
Oh, what do you think are some of the greatest challenges that their generation faces?
It's so difficult to answer that because we're living in an electronic age. For us that have grown up in the Bronze Age, but I wonder if I could survive in this new age because there's so much going on. It's really to your advantage, I believe. But that's the way life is. Some generations get the benefit of what others have sown.
There's a great piece of advice, getting the benefits from other generations. You grew up during the Depression,
Right.
and then lived through World War II and a number of conflicts. And I have to tell you, for those who are watching, the students in the classroom today watched as Mr. Miyamura and I were getting everything set up and watching everybody else work with the technology. And we were kind of laughing about the amazement that indeed we have somebody watching from Alaska and San Diego, and we're here in Gallup, New Mexico, and all this works. And we have this amazing little microphone that looks like a spaceship that doesn't it look like the landing capsule on the moon?
Yeah.
And so, take advantage of what you've learned from previous generations and draw on that. Let's have another student question.
Hello, Mr. Miner. My name is Dina Mitchell, and my question is, what type of student were you in school, such as grades, sports, friends, activities, or trouble?
Oh, let's shake up your memory here. They want to know what kind of student you were in school in terms of.
I was
in
hoping
terms
no
of-
one asked that question. I was a very poor student because growing up, I had no supervision. I used to stay up as late as I wanted. So during the school days and hours, I would be sleeping, and my classmates often wondered how did I graduate when I slept my way through school. But I regret doing that, and I sure as heck don't approve of that lifestyle.
They also asked about sports, and you were involved in sports. You tell them what sport you were involved in.
I was, but my favorite was boxing, and it just seemed to come so natural to me that that's all I really, in the sport world, that's the only sport I really enjoyed watching and participating in.
Did that come in handy later?
It did. It got me 3-day passes during the service. They said if you go box for 3 rounds, you get a 3-day pass. So I did that while we were stationed in Fort Meade, Maryland for about 3 months, and I got to go to New York City every so often.
Wow. You learn something new every time you do an interview with a Medal of Honor recipient. Good question. Thank you. Do we have another student question here?
Hello, Mr. Leader. I'm Matthew. And who were your heroes or people that you looked up to when you were growing up? And who are your heroes now?
Oh, so who were some people you looked up to when you were growing up? And who do you look up to these days? Do you have?
I used to watch the movies quite often, and I used to like the cowboy movies, and one in particular was Hopalong Cassidy. I know you folks have never heard of him, but he was always a good guy. Never had a girlfriend, but he was always a good guy. And I just liked the way he carried on during his movie career. And I also heard that he was such a good person outside of the movie theater.
Good answer. There's a question that popped up on the chat here. Somebody wanted to know how you got the nickname Hershey.
Well, that was from a school teacher in the 6th grade. Her name was Mrs. Bennett, and every time she would call roll, when she came to my name, she hesitated. And I knew it was my name she could not pronounce. So she said, I'm going to call you Hershey from now on. So I said, okay. And the student body also said they're going to calling me Hershey. And that name has stuck with me all through my school years and even today.
And I think it says in your book that she chose Hershey because even though that's close to your name, Hiroshi, she was familiar with the name of the candy bar.
Yeah, well, you know, my son's a graphic artist, and he put on that Hershey wrapper Hiroshi instead of Hershey.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did.
That's great.
Yeah.
We'll have to see that sometime. Super. Can we have another student question?
Hello,
Yeah.
Mr. Meyer. My name is Colin Zero. My question for you is, what is the greatest lesson your parents taught you as a child?
He wants to know the greatest lesson that your parents taught you as a child. And I know that might be kind of difficult because you lost your mom when you were 12
Well,
and your dad was working. But
we, before my mother passed on, and my father told us that all of us, he gathered us, there was 7 of us. I had 5 sisters and 1 younger brother. And he said, one of the most important things in life is that you be honest and not steal. And if you get caught stealing, the Japanese had a little wick-like thing that they would put on either your fingers or your back and let it burn until it left a scar. And we always remembered that. So we never did deserve anything like that. We never did act like that to deserve such a, punishment.
that's a pretty strong lesson.
Yeah, it is. It left a scar, and you carried that scar for a long time.
Leave a reminder there too then.
It's a reminder, mainly.
Okay. Thank you. Another student question?
Hello,
Yes.
Ms. Miyamura. I'm Leticia. Receiving the medal honor means others thought you went above and beyond. What do your friends think you did what you went above and beyond?
Oh, Letitia asked about the phrase in the Medal of Honor citation that says that you went above and beyond the call of duty. And she wondered what your friends thought about your actions that made those actions above and beyond.
Well, it's because that they really, the squad, I was a machine gun squad leader. And when I realized that we were going to be overrun, my position was going to be overrun, or we were going to get all of us were going to get killed, I just made the decision to have them withdraw back to the company area, and I stayed there to cover their withdrawal, never thinking anything other than protecting and trying to protect my men.
That's a leadership lesson. Take note of that. Thank you for that answer. And may we have another student question?
Mr. Miyamura, Scarlett again. How did the men in your unit treat you during the Korean War? And did you feel any prejudice from them?
Oh, did you feel any prejudice from the men you served with during the Korean War?
No, I never did, really. The only prejudice I got was from the enemy. The North Koreans, I did not know when I went to Korea that the Korean peninsula was under the Japanese occupation for 45 years, and they were forced to read and write Japanese. And I didn't know that they held such a bitter hatred for the Japanese at that time. And yet, had it not been for a North Korean lady, I wouldn't be here today. She helped me when I was starving. She gave me some food, and it was enough to make me want to keep going.
And that lady also took a great risk in
Oh,
doing
yeah,
that.
the following morning, I heard a big commotion, and I asked the interpreter what's happening, and the interpreter told me that, he asked me, did this lady give you some food? I said, yes. And he said, well, he was threatening to shoot her, and because that was his mother that gave me the food. And he just told me go on because I had to catch up with the truth, but I never did know whatever happened to the mother.
I want to show you just real quickly. This is the book Forged in Fire, and it is the story of, the subtitle is The Saga of Hershey and Joe. It was written by Vincent Okamoto. And this tells the story of Hershey's war experience, including his time in the prison camp. So that's something that is, I'm sure, readily available here in town. And so these kids can find it on Amazon. They can find anything on Amazon. You and I might not be able to find it, but they can find it. So, okay, I wanted everybody both out there and in the room here to be aware of that. Could we take another student question, please?
Yeah.
I'm Nicholas, and this is a question from the internet. Texas would like to know if you can instill one trait in today's youth, what would it be?
Okay, so a question that came in from a school in Texas is, if you could instill one trait in today's youth, what would it be?
I just,
One trait would you like our today's students and youth to have?
well, to be honest and believe and have faith in the Lord. To me, that's such an important lesson, because people are getting away from learning and remembering there is a God. Because I can vouch for my God by saying I would not be here had it not been for his helping me through my military career. I've had so many close calls that it was hard for me to understand why I was still alive. But that, to me, I believe, and that is when I came to a realization that there is a God, and he has helped me all these years. And I've never forgotten it, and I keep passing this information on to the young students to believe and have faith in God. He will help carry you through life.
Thank you so much. Maybe we have another student question.
My name is Soraya, and my question is, how long were you in the military after the war, and what did you do once you left the military?
Oh, so she wanted to know, how long were you in the military after the war? I think you may have addressed that with the Fort Bliss trip, but then what did you do after you were discharged from the military?
When I was discharged from the military, I almost re-enlisted for another hitch, and I got to thinking, after spending almost 28 months in a POW camp, I wanted a taste of freedom, and to raise, my primary goal was to go into a business and raise a family. I wanted to have some children, because we tried so hard to have children before I left for the service, but nothing ever happened. And that's when later I realized things happened that way, and had no control over it. So.
And you did have a family?
I did end up with 2 boys and a girl. Very fortunate that I was able to send them all to school, higher education. But I'm mostly proud of my granddaughter, because she went to the Air Force Academy and came out, passed, and married a fellow military person, and they eventually became in the same unit and same rank. They're captains in the same unit, and now they're stationed nearby, and I get to see them more often. And they're in Colorado Springs at the air base named Peterson. And I'm so fortunate that all my children have grown up, not been into any trouble of any kind. So I've been blessed.
It's a beautiful legacy you have had. And then what did you do for a career?
My mother, growing up, wanted me to become an auto mechanic, just like my cousin, who was considered a master mechanic, to learn from him, which I did. Many summers I went to work with him. He never paid me, by the way, but I still enjoyed working and learning about an automobile at an early age, and that came in handy eventually during my adult years. But during the war, I was only 16 when most of the mechanics were either drafted or volunteered for the military. The owner of the Ford agency asked me to come to work as a mechanic, and I was working as a mechanic when I was 16 years old and drawing mechanics' wages then. And then a very good friend of mine who was also a battalion veteran, he was a official in the government, became a senator, and he's held various different positions in our lawmakers. And as at that time, he was managing the bulk station at the west of Gallup, and he came to me, asked me if I would like to open this station that the Humble Oil Company has put up in Gallup. And I said I would like to try opening up a business such as a station. It was something new for me, and I thought it was going to be quite a challenge, but I did it, and I did it for 25 years. And I was able to send my children to school during that period.
That's quite an accomplishment for a small business owner.
Well, I couldn't depend on just selling gas. I was 2.5 miles out of Gallup, and there's really not much out there. So I had to rely on doing automobile repair work, and that's what helped me through my years.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Next question from students.
Hello, Mr. Miyamura. My name is Ethan, and I'd like to ask you, do you still keep in contact with soldiers from your units? And if so, what do you do? What do you do with soldiers from your units?
So do you still keep in contact with any soldiers from your unit? And if so, what did you do when you got together?
I used to, and I just lost the young man that's in the book with me. He's the first person I met when I joined the company. He was from Boston, and he was 18 years old. And I asked him, where's the rest of our troops? And he said, it's going to be up to us to train these draftees, South Korean draftees. And that was our job. And eventually that's what we did before we went overseas to North Korea.
So if you want to go Google after we're done with this, the Memorial Day program that's done from the mall in Washington, D.C., the historic mall there in the center, every year they do a Memorial Day program. And this last year, they featured the story of Joe Anello and Hiroshi Miyamura, and it was told by two actors representing them. And you two attended that together, didn't you? Did you attend that?
Did we?
At the Memorial Day service in Washington?
Uh-huh.
You were in attendance, weren't you, when the actors told your story? So
Joe and I both were in attendance.
yes, and that is recorded, and I'm sure you can find that on, somewhere online. It's a great piece to take a look at. Could we have another student question?
My name is Devlin, and my question is, have you ever been back to Korea ever since coming home from the war?
Oh, good question. Have you ever been back to Korea since the war? Tell us about that.
I've been back 7 times. And in 1975, the Korean government invited a cross-section of military people to Korea, paid all our expenses. They wanted to show us what they have accomplished in 25 years. And really, when we got there, we couldn't believe what we were seeing.
Now, was that South Korea?
This is South Korea, because see, it's always been their demarcation line between South and North Korea. But we were amazed at what they had done. When I arrived there in 1950, it was a country so back behind time. I'd say 100 years behind time. They had very few paved roads. Hardly any building was over 3 stories high. The average home was nothing but a mud hut life. And really, it's such an amazing sight to see when we got there.
Would you share with the students the story you told us yesterday about your visit to North Korea, or to Korea, when you were allowed to walk around the table that put you on the side of North Korea, but you weren't allowed to look at anybody? You were telling us that you went to when you were in the military, you were allowed to walk around a table in an office, and on one side of the table, you were on the North Korean side.
Yeah, well, that's at Panmunjom. I mean, the demarcation line. It's quite, it's an area that it's so, you just feel the tension. I've been up to that line 7 times, and every time I go up to that line, I feel that tension. And so many things have happened after the war that we never hear about. Many of our men have been killed, but never heard about anymore. I wanted to test them one time. That was a foolish move on my part, but there was a bridge, a walkway that I was told that I walked when I was released from the North Korean army, and I walked that bridge to Panmunjom, and I just could not remember that. But anyway, there was a white line across the middle of that bridge, and they said, if you cross that white line, they're going to shoot at you. This was one of the last visits I made, and I foolishly went down there. And I was going to act like I was going to step over that line. And that North Korean soldier came out and they had his army rifle pointed at me. So I really withdrew it in a hurry. But that's how the tension is up to even today. And then the last visit I made, 3 of us were called back to Korea. The government wanted to present us their version of the Medal of Honor. This little ribbon here represents the Korean Medal of Honor.
This one.
And they also have a sash that goes with it.
Yeah, I'm showing them in the picture so they can see this ribbon.
Oh.
There we go. Okay. So I think that's such an important story for us to hear, because it's so beyond our comprehension in this country that someone would draw a gun and point it at us for stepping over a line on a space like that, and that you're just leaning toward it would have them want to shoot you for potentially stepping into North Korea. That's really something that we're not used to hearing here. May we have another question from students? You guys are asking really great questions. We have about 10 minutes left, maybe a little less.
Okay. What was the most surprising or difficult part about being in a prisoner of war camp?
Well, I'm sorry, one more time.
What was the most surprising or difficult part about being in a prisoner of war camp?
Okay, so what was most surprising or difficult about actually being a prisoner of war?
Well, we realized that they did not honor the Geneva Convention, which allowed the Red Cross to send us packages from home. We did not receive any medical attention even a year later after being locked up for a year. Many of our men died from not receiving medical attention. Many died from not receiving the proper nutrition. We were just fed enough to exist, not to really survive and be healthy. So I learned so much that your body can take so much punishment. But if you abuse it, it's not going to last. But I've learned so much as a POW about life, like I said before. And I'll never forget what I learned there. But I would like to also pass on one thing that it just out of the world, because I, as a young boy, saw movies where people were stranded on a desert. They were dying of thirst. They need water badly. And then they saw an oasis with a water pond around them and palm trees, and they started racing towards that pond. And when they got there, there was nothing there. Well, that happened to me as far as food went, because we didn't receive the food that we really needed. And I saw a vision of pancakes, 3 high, butter running and syrup running down the side. And I was reaching out for it. And I fell and grabbed that air. And I was ready to give up, almost ready to give up. And that particular day, we stopped because we stopped at a village every night. We had to walk so many kilometers every day. And I never slept near a building of any kind, a barn or anything. I did that particular night. And that's when this lady came out and helped me. So that's what made me believe, like I do, that miracles happened in my life that I will never forget.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to take a little turn here. We have a question from a first grader in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And this first grader wants to know if you like horses and if you've ever ridden horses.
Horses?
Yeah, do you like horses and have you ever ridden horses?
Horses, but I don't think horses like me. My brother was just the opposite. As a young boy, he was crazy about horses. And he actually got kicked by a horse and went flying through the air. And luckily, nothing happened to him.
Wow. Did he still like horses after that?
He still, in fact, after he married in California, he had to house his horse 20 miles from where he lived. And he had to go out every day to feed it. That you have to love horses to
I'll
do
say.
that. But I never did like horses, because every time I rode a horse, my thighs would ache so much for days that I said, I'm not meant to ride horses.
Yeah, it hurts my knees when I get on a horse.
But he was an excellent rider also. He would go to different shows. And he had an Arabian horse that really was beautiful.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd love to get the questions from the little kids too. Yes, may we have another question here?
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Miyamura. My name's Bryce. I was wondering, what responsibilities do you feel you have, if any, as a recipient of the Medal of Honor?
Do you feel like the Medal of Honor came with some responsibilities? And if so, what?
Oh, I think it carries a heavy responsibility. Every time we wear this ribbon, we're not wearing it just for ourselves. We're wearing it for those that did not receive it, that should have received it. They never received the recognition for their heroic actions because they had no witnesses. So it's carries we have to behave ourselves because people look to us as the person of integrity. And I really, but I do feel that we owe those comrades that never received recognition.
Thank you. Good question. Let's do one more. We have one more question here.
Hi, Mr. Miyamura. My name is Shania. I just wanted to ask how you feel about having a school named after you.
Oh, excellent question. How do you feel about having this wonderful school named after you?
You know, that's such an honor, and I can't believe it today. But I always felt that a person should be gone before they start naming. But really, no, I'm very fortunate that I get to meet the students of Miyamura High because you're the future of this country. And that's why we like to talk to you about what we feel you should know and at least practice. That's our goal. Produce good, patriotic citizens. And I believe our country's gotten off course by not teaching the young ones, especially the fifth graders and all, what I had learned when I was in the fifth grade about government, how it runs, who's your elected representatives. I think the average youngster doesn't know much about American history. And I feel very sadly about that. I think we should go back to those days where they teach American history the way we learned it.
Thank you so much. We are unfortunately out of time here. I have to turn this back over to the EdWeb people to show a few slides and give the teachers some direction. But thank you so much for joining me today. And I feel like we ran out of time, so maybe we'll come back and do it again sometime. Would that be good?
I hope I'm around.
Oh, well, you hang on there. We talked earlier about 94 as something to celebrate, so you keep them coming, okay?
I don't.
Thank you. Back to you, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hiroshi, for your service and for sharing your story with us here today. And thank you, Kathy, and the Congressional Medal of Honor Society for helping us make this possible. And to Ms. Tyra's students from Hiroshi Miyamura High School, and to all the educators and students who logged in today. And we urge you to check out the CMOH site. You can access lesson plans, learn about other recipients, and more. And please join the community on EdWeb at www.edweb.net/CMOH. You'll be able to watch past interviews, earn CE certificates, participate in discussion forums, and be notified about upcoming webinars. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you next time.